You've stood on a riverbank before, maybe last summer, maybe last weekend. You picked a spot that looked right, you swirled that pan until your back ached, and at the end of the day, you had a little black sand and not one single flake of color. And you told yourself what most folks tell themselves, that the gold's all gone, that the good rivers got cleaned out 100 years ago, that you were just born too late. I want you to let that go right now, because it isn't true. The gold is still there. It's still moving down these rivers every spring when the snow melts and the water runs high. The problem was never the river. The problem was that nobody ever taught you how to read it. So today I'm going to walk you through the 7 best rivers in America where you can still find gold. Real rivers with real names and real history. For each one, I'll tell you where the gold came from, exactly what part of the river to work, the signs on the ground that mean you're standing in the right place, and roughly what folks are pulling out of them today. And that 7th river? That's the one almost nobody talks about, the one with the least competition and some of the richest untouched pockets left in the country. So stick with me all the way to the end. If you love this stuff, reading the ground, understanding where gold hides, learning to tell real gold from the junk that fools everyone, then this channel is built for you. And you might want to subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Now, before I name a single river, you need to understand one thing, because this is where almost everybody goes wrong. Gold doesn't spread itself out evenly along a river. It never has. Gold is heavy, about 19 times heavier than water, and around 7 or 8 times heavier than the sand and gravel it travels with. That single fact controls everything. When water is moving fast, it can carry gold along with all the lighter material. But the second that water slows down, the gold drops. It doesn't drift a little farther like sand does. It sinks right there, and it works its way down through the gravel until it hits something solid it can't pass, usually bedrock or a hard clay layer. So gold collects in the exact places where a river loses its energy. The inside bend of a curve where the current goes slack. The downstream side of a big boulder where the water swirls and stalls. Cracks and crevices in the bedrock that act like natural riffles. The deepest part of a slow pool. That's the logic. Every river I'm about to give you follows those same rules. The names change, the scenery changes, the history changes, but the physics never does. Once you understand that gold is chasing the slow water and the low points, you stop wandering a river at random and you start hunting it. So, as I go through these 7 rivers, don't just memorize the names. Watch how the same principle shows up on every one of them. That's the real lesson here. Let's start out west, with a river whose name is practically a synonym for gold, the American River in California. Here's something that surprises people. The entire California Gold Rush, the event that pulled 300,000 people across the country, started with a single flake found in this river's water. January of 1848, at Sutter's Mill on the South Fork, a carpenter named James Marshall spotted something shining in the tail race. That one moment changed the country. And here's the part that matters to you today. That river is still producing. The American River drains straight out of the gold-bearing rock of the Sierra Nevada. And every winter, the high water tears more gold loose from the mountains and pushes it downstream. What you're looking for here is coarse gold, sometimes small nuggets, often bright and rounded from tumbling. Work the South Fork especially on public land where recreational panning and sluicing are allowed. Put your eyes on the inside bends and the bedrock exposures where the river narrows. Look for that reddish-brown iron staining on the rocks and for streaks of heavy black sand, magnetite, because gold travels with that black sand almost everywhere. Here's the beginner's mistake on the American. People rush to the middle of the river where the water's deep and fast, thinking that's where the action is. Wrong. The fast center is where gold moves through, not where it settles. You want the edges, the slack water, the cracks. Get that right on the American, and you'll understand why folks have worked this river for 175 years and still haven't emptied it. And that same idea carries us straight to the next one. Head north and east into the mountains, and you'll find the Klamath River, running out of southern Oregon down through northern California. If the American is the famous one, the Klamath is the workhorse. This river cuts through some of the most heavily mineralized country in the West, and it's known for producing not just flakes, but real, honest nuggets. Fishermen and dredgers have pulled gold from the Klamath for well over a century, and the stretches on public land still give it up today. What makes the Klamath special is its bedrock. In a lot of places, the river runs right over exposed bedrock with deep natural cracks, and those cracks are gold traps that have been filling for thousands of years. Look for the seams and crevices running across the current and clean them out down to the bottom. The gold sits at the very base, packed in with black sand and heavy gravel. Focus below where fast water dumps into a slower pool, because that drop in speed is exactly where the heavy stuff falls out. The beginner's mistake here is quitting too shallow. People scrape the top of a crevice, get a little sand, and move on. But the gold is at the bottom, sometimes under a foot of packed gravel, sitting right against the bedrock where it's been for centuries. You have to dig it out. Which brings up a question worth asking yourself. How many times have you walked away from a spot that was holding gold 2 inches below where you stopped digging? Keep that thought, because it comes back. Now let me swing you all the way across the country to the East Coast, because a lot of prospectors don't even know there's gold out here. The third river is the Chestatee in northern Georgia. Yes, Georgia. There was a gold rush here in 1829, 20 years before California, and the town of Dahlonega was so rich they built a U.S. mint there to coin the gold. The Chestatee and the creeks around it drain a belt of gold-bearing rock that runs right up through the southern Appalachians. The gold here tends to be finer than out west, more flakes and fine gold than big nuggets, but it's steady, and the competition is a fraction of what you'll find in California. Look for the same signs. Inside bends, slow water behind obstructions, and especially where a smaller creek dumps into the main river and the current suddenly slows. That's a natural trap. Watch for red clay and quartz gravel, because the gold up here rode down out of quartz veins. The mistake beginners make on the Chestatee is bringing a Western mindset and hunting for nuggets. You won't see gold winking at you from the gravel here. It's fine. And you have to work your black sand carefully in the pan, letting the water carry off the light material one careful swirl at a time. Miss that fine gold, and you'll swear the river is empty when it's actually paying you. You're just washing it right back out. And speaking of things that fool you, let's talk about the trickster that's fooled prospectors on every one of these rivers. Because on every single river I've named so far, there is something in the pan that will make your heart jump and then break it. Pyrite, fool's gold. It's a shiny, brassy, metallic mineral, and it has fooled people for as long as people have looked for gold. Here's how you beat it in 5 seconds. Real gold is soft and it doesn't sparkle. It has a warm, buttery glow, and it looks the same whether it's in bright sun or deep shade. Pyrite is brittle and it glitters, and it shows sharp little cubic edges and flat faces that catch the light. So try this. Move the material into shadow. If it goes dull and dark, that's pyrite. Gold stays gold. In the shade. Then press it with a pin or your knife tip. Gold flattens and bends like soft metal because it's soft. Pyrite shatters into little pieces and crumbles. 2 checks, 5 seconds, and you'll never be fooled again. Remember that trick, because I'm going to bring it back before we're done. There's a second imposter waiting for you on one of these rivers that's even sneakier than pyrite. River number 4 takes us back west to the Snake River, running across southern Idaho. Now this one's different, and it's the kind of gold that trips people up. The Snake carries what's called fine flour gold, gold ground down into flakes so thin and light they'll float on the surface tension of the water if you're not careful. There is a tremendous amount of it in that river, spread across long stretches, and back in the day, whole operations were built along the Snake just to capture this superfine gold. Here's the mechanism that matters. Because this gold is so light, it doesn't behave like coarse gold. It gets carried farther, and it concentrates in fine sandbars and along the top of clay layers rather than deep in the gravel. Look for the fine, dark sand on the inside of the big, lazy bends, and pay attention to any hard-packed clay layer under the sand. Flour gold rides on top of that clay because it can't sink through it. The beginner's mistake here is deadly, and it's the exact frustration I opened with. People pan Snake River sand the same way they'd pan mountain gravel, fast, aggressive swirls, and they wash every bit of that flour gold right over the lip of the pan without ever seeing it. Then, that they go home and tell everybody the snake is fished out. It is not fished out. You have to slow down, tilt the pan gently, and let that fine gold settle. Recovering flour gold is a patience game, not a strength game. Get that through your head, and a river that gave you nothing will suddenly start paying. The 5th river is a giant, and it's one people forget entirely, the Fraser River. Now technically the main Fraser runs through British Columbia, so let me point you to the American side of this same gold system, the rivers of northern Washington and the country that drains toward it. This whole northern region saw a rush in 1858 that pulled tens of thousands of miners north, and the gold-bearing gravels along these northern rivers and their tributaries are still producing coarse gold in flakes today on public ground where prospecting's allowed. What I want you to take from this one is the concept of the ancient channel. Rivers move over thousands of years. The spot where the water runs today isn't always where it ran 10,000 years ago. And those old buried river channels, sometimes sitting up on a bench above the current river or off to the side under a layer of dirt and rock, can be loaded with gold that the modern river never touched. Look for old gravel deposits, rounded river rock, sitting higher than today's waterline. That rounded rock is the tell. It means water tumbled it, and where water tumbled rock, water sorted gold. The beginner's mistake is only ever looking at the water that's wet right now. The richest ground is sometimes 50 feet from the river and 20 feet up, in a channel that's been dry for 10,000 years. Ask yourself, have you ever walked right past an old bench of river gravel and never thought twice about it? Most people do. Now you won't. Let me stop here and tell you a true story, because it makes this real. In the summer of 1977 in Butte County, California, not far from these very gold rivers, a man named Willard Bowers was operating heavy equipment when a nugget turned up that came to be known as the Willard Nugget. But the story I really want you to sit with is closer to home for the average person. All across gold country, there are documented cases of ordinary folks, not professionals, not big companies, finding significant gold in places that had supposedly been worked out a century before. Nuggets weighing several ounces have been recovered in recent decades from California rivers that every expert swore were empty. In 2014, a prospector working a well-known California river district pulled a single nugget weighing more than half a pound from ground that had been dredged, sluiced, and picked over since 1849. Think about that. 165 years of people working that river, and it still held a chunk of gold worth thousands of dollars, waiting in a crevice for someone who knew how to read the bedrock. That's the whole lesson in one story. The gold that's left isn't gone. It's hidden in the spots the hurried and the untrained skip right over. The river was never empty. The people just didn't know where to look. Which brings us to the 6th river, the Rogue, in southern Oregon. The Rogue is beautiful, it's rugged, and it's been giving up gold since the 1850s. What makes the Rogue worth your time is the way it runs through steep, bouldery country. And boulders, my friend, are gold traps you can see with your naked eye. Here's the mechanism. When fast water hits a big boulder, it has to go around it. And on the downstream side, the current swirls and dies for just a moment. In that dead spot, the gold drops out. Every large stationary boulder in a river is potentially sitting on top of a pocket of gold on its downstream side, right down against the bedrock. On the Rogue, look for those house-sized rocks that have obviously been there for ages and work the downstream side and the gravel packed underneath and behind them. Look, too, for the black sand. Those dark, heavy magnetite streaks are your treasure map because gold and black sand settle together in the exact same slow spots. The beginner's mistake on the Rogue is being afraid of the hard work. The gold behind a big boulder is often under heavy, packed cobble that takes real effort to move. But that effort is exactly why it's still there. Most people won't do it, so the gold waits. Are you willing to move the rock everyone else walked around? That's the difference between a full pan and an empty one. And now the seventh river, the one I promised you at the start, the one with the least competition and some of the richest untouched pockets left in the country. I'm talking about the 40-mile river country and the wild rivers of interior Alaska. Here's what shocks most people. Alaska has more accessible, legally prospectable gold ground than the entire lower 48 combined, and huge stretches of it have barely been touched since the original rushes of the 1890s. The 40 Mile saw gold before the famous Klondike rush ever happened, and the gold there is coarse, chunky, and often close to bedrock and ground that's simply too remote for most people to bother with. That remoteness is the whole point. It's why the gold's still there. The mechanism in Alaska is the same as everywhere else, with one powerful addition. Much of this ground is affected by permafrost and by ancient buried channels, which means gold has been locked and preserved in place for thousands of years without being disturbed. Look for the same signs: bedrock cracks, the insides of bends, the downstream side of boulders, and the black sand layers. But understand you're often looking at deposits that no modern equipment has ever gone through. The gold up here can be beautiful, coarse, and heavy, sometimes running larger than anything you'll find down south. Now, the beginner's mistake with Alaska isn't a panning mistake. It's never trying at all, assuming it's impossible or all locked up. There's tremendous public land in Alaska open to recreational prospecting, and the competition per square mile is a tiny fraction of what you'll fight for on the American or the Rogue. This is the frontier that's still open. If you ever get the chance to work that country, you'll be reading ground that hasn't given up its gold to anyone yet. Now let me bring back that second imposter I warned you about, because up in this northern black sand country especially, it'll get you. It's not pyrite this time, it's mica. Little flat flakes of mica in your pan will flash gold and bronze and silver as the light hits them, and they float and dance in the water exactly where you'd expect gold to be. Here's your 5-second check. Mica is weightless. It swirls and rides up with the water and won't stay put at the bottom of your pan. Gold sits dead still at the lowest point and never moves once it's settled. And mica is paper thin and flexible. You can crush a flake to powder between 2 fingernails. You could never do that to gold. So if it's flashing and dancing and floating, it's mica. If it's sitting heavy and still and glowing that warm, buttery color in the shade, that's the real thing. Between the pyrite check and the mica check, you now have the 2 tricks that separate the excited amateurs from the folks who actually go home with gold. So let me ask you something, and I really do want your answer. Of these 7 rivers, the American, the Klamath, the Chestatee, the Snake, the northern Fraser country, the Rogue, and the wild rivers of Alaska, which ones have you worked before? And be honest, How many times do you think you were standing right on top of gold and just didn't know the signs? Tell me in the comments which river you've panned and what you found, even if at the time you thought it was nothing. I read them, and I promise you the folks in that comment section learn as much from each other as they do from me. Let's bring this home. 25 minutes ago, maybe you still believed the good rivers were played out and the gold was gone. Now you know better. You know that gold chases slow water and sinks to the lowest point it can reach. You know to work the inside bends, the downstream side of boulders, the bedrock cracks, and the black sand layers. And you know that black sand is your map because gold rides right along with it. You know 7 real rivers by name from Georgia to Alaska. And you know what kind of gold each one holds and how the same physics rules every one of them. You can tell pyrite from gold in 5 seconds by dropping it in the shade, and mica from gold by whether it floats or sits still and heavy. You are not the same prospector you were when this started, because the truth is, gold was never rare. Knowing how to read the ground is what's rare, and now you can do it. So the next time you walk a riverbank, I don't want you to be the person who steps over a fortune in a crevice and keeps on walking. If you want to keep learning how to read water, rock, and the ground under your boots, subscribe and stick around. Because next time I'm going to show you the exact bedrock signs that tell you gold is sitting right beneath your feet before you ever dip a pan. Until then, get out there, read that water, and dig where the others won't. Good luck out there, gold hunter.